What's up, guys? Node Investor here. Time for another market update recap on this wonderful cryptocurrency action that we are seeing. Is it alt season? There's a lot of people starting to talk about it. Twitter, Telegram, chat rooms, they're all getting a little excited, maybe a little ahead of themselves, in my opinion. So I'm going to cover some of that. There is some good, there is some caution to be aware of, and so just going to share some thoughts on where I think things may be going. Certainly there has been some very nice price action here in the first half of March, much better than we saw even in February here recently. But while the action is positive, the action's good, we continue to see pretty decent runs in some of these names. I am getting a little cautious. Things are starting to get a little too excited, and we're seeing the cycle play out here. You're seeing, the big caps move, and then the mid caps, and here in the last few days, for lack of a better word, it's mostly just been the crap coins pumping, to be honest. There are some good ones, and let's be honest, in this space, there's always something moving, decent names moving. There's still good setups out there, and I'll show a few of these that I'm watching right now, but I have been booking some gains here, getting a little cautious, but I want to take a look at the big picture, look at Bitcoin, and then look at some specific names. Looking at the coin market cap here, prices are still edging up here. Coin market cap around that $134 billion mark. But if we look at the last 7 days here, some of the big moves, Engine Coin was a big mover last week, still up big in the last 7 days. Einsteinium, remember that one? Cosmo Coin, Grossel Coin, Keeper Network, Modella Loyalty Coin pumping again. We're seeing Civic move. Zcoin had a massive pump yesterday. Bitcoin Diamond? Of course, VeChain broke out a little bit. Icon has been strong already, and we're going down the list. But you can see the top of the list here, some of the big movers in the last week or so have been the small cap, micro cap, usually low volume names, easy to pump, quick to move. And so just want to remain cautious as we're starting to move into that segment of the cycle. But if you look at the overall market cap, not a lot of change. It's mostly been a rotation. If you look at the Bitcoin dominance, still relatively the same in that mid-low 50s mark. And even the coin market cap with these big pumps we're seeing hasn't really moved a whole lot. Mostly because Bitcoin still remains sideways, choppy, going flat here. Some of the bigger cap names also doing the same. And in the small caps, mid cap space land, we're seeing just a rotation. You're seeing some names pump, other names pull back, and so forth. So it's been kind of a quick trade market. You ride those moves, they hit their targets, you get out of the way, and then you're on to the next one, which is just fine if you're willing to spend the time and be a little bit more active in doing that, which I have been here lately. So before we get going, just want to remind everybody, nodeinsiders.com is the alert system, and we continue to add value and add new features to this site along with the proprietary indicators. As you guys know, you also get access to my training course video library, but we have recently added an analysis page. So for those of you that are subscribers, go check out this analysis page. A couple times a week, I will go out there, post this market summary analysis. This is similar to what I was posting on the Slack group, the Node Insider Slack group, and it just gives you what the market values were at the time of the analysis, the general trend, some key price points, support and resistance levels, the watch list that I generally maintain, breakout names, setup, pullback entries, that sort of thing, a summary write-up, and some charts to go check out. So we'll see those every few days or so here, and then you can get the last few here if you want to see what I was thinking in the past here. So market summary analysis, that's a new addition to the site, along with our auto-generated watch list, and of course the proprietary alerts and this combined market value, which at the moment is reading caution, and that's because the 4-hour view is losing a little bit of momentum. The daily view is still in the green, barely. It's at 65 right now, between 0 and 100. 65 is barely in the bull zone, and so there is certainly a little bit of caution. I use this as a risk barometer, helps me decide whether or not I want to get aggressive in the alt trades or start taking some profit and so forth. So let's take a look at the charts here. Looking at BTC here on the Coinbase exchange, this is the daily chart, and looking at the last couple of weeks, still very much in this choppy range. You can see it's not made a lot of substantial progress one way or the other. Very wicky, very choppy, no doubt not a clean chart. But as I've mentioned, the trend is still your friend a little bit here. I mean, if you look at the moving averages, right, the moving averages are still trending higher. The 10 EMA is still above the 22 EMA, above the 50 EMA, so they're all stacked positively. Price action is just kind of in and around that 10 EMA, still hasn't substantially closed below that, but over the last few days, we have seen the Bitcoin price start to drift a little bit. Was not able to break through that resistance at 39.50, pulled right back here in the last few days, pulling back, but the buyers continue to show up every time it dips. So for now, until that changes, got to give it the benefit of the doubt. If we zoom out and look at the weekly chart, in the big picture, still technically in a bear market. I mean, no doubt you see the general weekly trend still in a bear market. I mentioned we had 3 green weeks in a row. What's the likelihood that we see 4 here at this point? We'll maybe finish flat, maybe red here. We're above the 10 EMA on the weekly chart, but we're still in this broader little pattern, right? This big bear pennant potentially forming. And then more importantly, if you look at the last few weeks, the last month, let me zoom up here just so it makes it easier to see. There's this minor trend that you want to keep an eye on here on this weekly chart, right? This last 6 weeks of trend that have really begun to establish. Breaking below that may not be too positive here. You could see a retest of the lower end here on this macro pennant that's forming, and that would basically bring prices right back to that $3,500 level. And so that's something to keep an eye on here as we continue to form this broader pattern within the big picture. And so while the action in the alts has absolutely been positive in light of this relatively small movement in Bitcoin, just got to remain cautious because we know at any time Bitcoin could roll over. If there's a quick drop, absolutely it will end the party in the alts that we're seeing right now. So just be mindful of that. And I'm always remaining cautious, especially after a few attempts and failing at to that same resistance level. But on the daily chart, the key price point that I'm watching here, that horizontal price resistance here in and around that 4,100 level basically, right? That's been the level that has not been able to really hold for very much time. You can see there was a test back here in December, pulled back, tested it early January, had a much deeper pullback before this most recent rally we saw in February. And again, that failed right around that $4,200 level. And here we are just kind of in the middle of the range. And so just something to keep an eye on here. Now, what I am watching, and to be fair, this is a little bit of a stretch, but certainly something I'm keeping an eye on here, is you have this potential left shoulder forming there. You've got this deeper lower low, which creates that head, and then maybe a right shoulder. But of course, that's going to mean this has got to resolve itself here pretty soon and start testing that horizontal price point resistance. If that plays out, however, that'd be a very bullish breakout, especially considering this is a multi-month base that is setting up here at the lows. And so breaking out from here, if you do a measured move, just strictly going from the depth of the head to that neckline there, assuming that's the pattern that plays out, of course, that would project out to around that $4,900 level. Of course, 5K I think will be psychological resistance, which is right there. And then the next major resistance point around 5,600. Honestly, I don't see it getting that high on a move out of this range. You'd likely start to see some selling and make a lower high on the weekly chart, but 4,900 would be a nice target if prices can break out. But for now, first things first, we got to see this daily chart really start to show some life here and see a strong volume push come in and take it right back to that $4,100 level. So that's what I'm going to be keeping an eye on. If prices begin to move higher and start to edge into that range, I'm going to be on high alert for a potential breakout here on this daily pattern. Of course, on the flip side, the same level holds true as far as that near-term resistance. That's essentially that $3,700 level. Let me zoom in here for us. And that was this last low, this last base that was back here that we had that breakout for, and it has been retested several times here in the recent past. You saw this big wick test here, then a few days back, that retest there, which was quickly recovered and bounced back, of course, hasn't cleared resistance. And so if prices begin to roll over, don't want to see that thing tested again, because on a third try, it's a good chance it may not hold this time and break. A break below that would certainly be negative, would end this little bit of a rally that we've seen here in the last few weeks. And so just something to keep an eye on here on the near term. But looking at the altcoin picture, there has been some very nice moves here this week. I mentioned Dash here. We've been watching Dash here for a while. I was covering this one on the live stream, the private live stream on Monday. I said, hey, this has tested that breakout point again. It's still channeling, something to keep an eye on. And sure enough, finally breaks out. The target that I was looking for was this resistance line. And you can see that's where it's pausing here at the moment as I record this, and so I have already scaled out, taken my profits on that trade, but something I'm still keeping an eye on. The volume was compelling, very strong volume on that breakout. It makes sense that it's pausing here at this resistance, but I'm going to keep an eye on it, let it digest this move a little bit. If it begins to settle out and set up another potential entry point, maybe one I'm going to look at for a breakout above this resistance. Then above this, I'd be looking for a retest of this high here around that 26,700 level on the Dash BTC pair. Engine, of course, Engine was a big winner, was getting a lot of attention. Of course, here at the highs, the videos started coming out. It's going to be the next best thing since sliced bread, and generally that marks a little bit of a top. You know, it's pausing here right now, but to be fair, it's still holding up. The moving averages are catching up. It's just digesting this move. It needed to. I mean, just the move, the size of the move was huge, right? You had this rally here, which was about almost 180%, and you had another big rally, which at the peak has taken the price up almost 600% in a very short period of time. And so at some point, that's just not sustainable. It's going to need some time to sit tight, recover some of that move. It's a small cap name. The volume was absolutely bullish, but absolutely needed some time to recover, was extended. Finally pulling back here a little bit, holding the moving average. Volume on this pullback has been mild, which is good for the bulls. And so we'll see if this can settle out here a little bit, give some sort of secondary entry point, maybe a little bit of a bull flag here on this daily chart. So that's still a good one to be watching, but needed some time to cool off. And we were seeing a lot of these pumps, right? You're seeing names like Knowles last weekend during the live stream we were watching it, had these huge pumps out of nowhere, but they very quickly pull back in. This week, I believe Monday, you had the Coin pump just kind of out of nowhere, off of the lows, big pullback. And so you're seeing a lot of that, and it's just very short-lived, cycling out. There's Loom has been pretty strong. So if you look at the list that we were looking at here again, that's the names, right? Coin, Loom, Keeper Network, Modella. Some of these names have just been strong. Pump and Zcoin, for example. Massive move out of nowhere. Certainly pump and dump groups pushing some of this stuff, and you know, they just kind of flatline and pull back. So be careful. Don't be chasing any of those moves. Have a game plan before you get in a trade. Make sure it aligns with your strategy. Make sure you have a entry point, an exit point, that sort of thing. All those disciplines. It's easy to start throwing caution at the wind when these names are running so fast. It gets very exciting, but just something I want to remind you guys of. Aeon was another one I was looking for, a breakout. It did have that nice little breakout, pulling right back to the breakout point. Gave another little bit of move over the last few days. Not as strong as I would have expected. Looking at VeChain. VeChain finally broke out above some long time resistance I've been watching. Still holding a position in this one here as I record this, but VeChain above that 127 level was what I was watching for here on the BTC side. And this has tested this level multiple times. Again, you go back to November, resistance back here. You look at it right here in mid-December and right here in January, and finally breaking out. And the volume was compelling here on this breakout. Very positive action there. So VeChain still on my radar, looking good. Again, was on the radar Monday before the breakout, keeping an eye on it, and sure enough, the volume came in, so was able to jump on that one. Omise Go was another one I've been watching here. A good breakout candidate. Was watching this near-term resistance, pushing through a little bit, edging out. Not as strong as the volume as I would have liked to see on this breakout higher, but nonetheless, still holding up above that point there. Next target up, if it continues to move, is around that 400s range, so 420 to maybe that 430 range, and in around there is what I'm going to be watching here if this can continue to hold up. Wanchain is one of the stronger names out there. I posted this as a potential breakout candidate, and it is finally edging out. Not huge. I want to see the volume come in, but has been settling out. This one had a prior run already, had a nice run. At this point was up, you know, about 40-50%, and has since just been consolidating. Was getting a little symmetrical here earlier, and so that was your early entry point here if you're watching this breakout point here when it started to clear that, and then confirmation above this yellow line, this little ascending triangle base, but still looking pretty good here. So on the big picture in the daily chart, what I'm watching here is this next major resistance back in here. Let me move this line here for us. Around that 1348, 1350 level, it's going to be the next target, but at that point, it will start to look a little extended, especially on the daily chart. The RSI had just barely started to cool off, and now that it's moving, it's starting to push right back up there into that mid-70s range. Volume is very strong, very bullish here too. Really liking that action, so could certainly keep going, but one I'm going to play a little tight, especially with BTC just kind of sitting there, could go either way from here, but Wanchain still looking pretty good all around. So I'm liking this one to keep an eye on. Stellar Lumens finally gets added to Coinbase and had technically already broken out. So I had already booked most of my gains on this one. And it was funny because I was joking about it, saying, all right, we're in Stellar. Coinbase is going to finally pump this one for us, right? It'd be nice. And this was really the breakout point. I entered this trade over the weekend, even though I generally will not trade over the weekend and take some time off. We were looking at this one during the live stream on Saturday, shortly after it started to break out here. And so I did make an entry on this one on Saturday here on this little pullback, and had a pretty decent run. And finally, when it started to get real choppy and in around this range here, just decided I'm going to start scaling out, taking the rest of the gains off the table for this one. And of course, Coinbase comes out and decides to finally add it. So we were looking for this one, but surprisingly, the rally is not quite as strong as I would have expected. Maybe it's a little bit of a delayed effect, but I doubt it. Feels a little exhausted here as it is anyway. Pushing into that target that I was looking for on that first move up into this 2900 level on the BTC pair. If you look at the daily chart, the RSI is already pretty elevated. And so, I'm skeptical as far as how much more could it go before it needs a little bit of a breather anyway, a little bit of a pause. Now from here, if it can consolidate here at this level and let things cool off a little bit, then that may set up a nice secondary entry point and then a breakout move through that resistance. So just what I'm watching here at this point. I'm not in it anymore, but hey, finally added to Coinbase. Is it going to pull a Ripple? Remember when Ripple was added? Not a whole lot of fanfare on that move either. The Coinbase pump potentially is losing its oomph. But for the Stellar Bulls, the Stellar bag holders, those that have been waiting for this, it's finally there. Good to see that Coinbase is continuing to expand their tradable coin options, which is nice. And speaking of Ripple, let's take a look at that chart. This is one that continues to come up. Many of you guys often ask me about this one, and it's really been the same story for me. I'm just generally not bullish on this one right now. It continues to be the laggard. You get these random quick one-day short-lived pumps, but you can see here in the big picture just continue to drop. If we go to the daily chart, every spike is sold into. Now there is the potential that it's finding a low here, but I want to see some confirmation. And until it tends to break this downtrend and begin closing here on the upside, I'm just not going to chase it. I want to see some more confirmation and looking for the corner to finally be turned before I get a little bit more excited about this one. So for now, I'm just going to wait on this one. It's a little bit of a pass for me until we begin to see a little bit more sustained movement and volume to the upside. Looking at some of the bigger cap names here, going to ETH first, ETH BTC, still looking a little bit weak here. I mentioned this potential for a double top here when it reversed back. Also the potential, hey, maybe this is a cup and handle, but I'm not so bullish on it anymore, especially this day here that we saw last week, this nice push off the lows. If this was going to be a cup and handle setup, that was a good opportunity for some follow through to the upside. That was the candle that we wanted to see turn the corner and begin showing some follow through, retesting this prior high back here. We didn't see that, and it's just really drifted lower and given back most of that. So I'm watching this one closely. Not as strong looking of a chart here at this point. The positive is it's still holding above this support here, which was also this breakout candle back here on February 17th. And so if it continues to hold up there, that'll be good. But ultimately, I want to see it take out this downtrend, change this pattern of lower highs, and begin moving upward again and potentially forming a good low at this point. So for now, just going to wait on this one. But the fact that ETH is not leading on the way up, the fact that it's been lagging, Ripple has been lagging, Tron has been lagging, Bitcoin Cash has been lagging. A lot of these big cap alts are just kind of signifying a little bit of a pause in the alt space, which is giving me some reservations about the excitement, the calls for the next start of the alt season that I'm hearing a lot about right now. Now, again, March has been good, no doubt. I mean, the first 2 weeks of March, the trading account has had a better 2 weeks than I did all of the month of February. So it certainly has been good if you've been active, you've been trading and catching some of those quick moves. But when everything starts working, I get a little bit nervous. And I mentioned this in the group a few days ago and going, all of my trades are working. That's usually a bad sign when I've had several trades in a row and nothing's getting stopped out. It's almost too easy at some point, and it's like, start to get a little cautious. And the tendency is get a little bit overconfident, start sizing up, taking a little bit more aggressive positions. And, you learn the hard way after you do that a few times, and you realize book some gains, lock in some profits, start trading a little smaller instead, and wait for the market to prove you wrong otherwise, but always kind of being cautious and not wanting to give up those gains, because that's the most frustrating thing. If you have a good run, good couple of weeks or a good couple of days, giving back all those gains very quickly is very frustrating. So lesson learned, don't do that. And that's the approach I'm taking right now, and I'm just going to take a little bit more of a cautious stance. Now that doesn't mean I'm not taking any trades. In fact, I still have a few trades still open, but I am certainly playing it a little bit tighter here. Looking at Bitcoin or Binance versus BTC here, continues to just rock and just impressive move. And if we look at the weekly chart in here for emphasis, I'm going to take off the logarithmic adjustment here, but man, we all just want the rest of the alts to have weekly charts that look like that, don't we? And just the massive powerful move that we've seen here in Binance Coin over the last couple of months has just been nothing short of impressive. Of course, it's new high territory. There's no resistance up here versus BTC. Once it finally broke out, it's paused a little bit and then just started going again. Now, of course, look at the weekly RSI here. Weekly RSI in the 90 almost range. So is this something I would chase here at this point? Is this something I would buy? Me personally, no. If I wasn't in it already, I'd not be buying this. In fact, I maybe would be booking some gains on this one or waiting for this to settle out. But of course, that depends on your strategy, your time horizon, all that stuff. But very nice, continues to be the leader, but at this point it's going parabolic, and so it'll be interesting to see where this one finally decides to settle out. If you look at it from the dollar perspective, however, of course nowhere near all-time highs, but still an impressive move, closing in on this most recent major resistance, which was last summer, and again that's around that $17 mark. Prices at this point $15, and so this is really the window I'm watching here, where I think we'll begin to see a little bit more of a pause somewhere in this range, maybe sitting tight here, forming a handle and some consolidation before setting up a run for the all-time highs from this pair, and that's going to push it to around that $24 range. So BNB, nonetheless, one of the strongest names out there. And last but not least, looking at Litecoin. Now, Litecoin did have a breakout. It is settling out here a little bit above the breakout point. I was watching this one for a potential pullback entry. Was not one I wanted to chase at this point, and so still watching this one. This was really the setup to be watching if you missed this breakout point here. Ideally, what I'd like to see is maybe a retest of that level and then a push higher above this resistance. If we go to the daily chart here, you can see also a little bit on the extended side, seeing some divergences showing up on this daily. RSI divergence is showing up there, slight divergence on the MACD as prices push higher, and right into that resistance level, that major target I was looking for here on the BTC price. You can see back here, this was a major support level that finally was broken, and then of course that led to a very deep pullback before finding a low, and this rally has taken it just about to that point again, and so it makes sense that there's a little bit of a pause, a little bit of profit taking finally showing up here at this level. So many of these names are still looking okay, still looking strong, but in the big picture, got to remain cautious until BTC can decide which way it wants to go from here. We may begin to see a little bit more rotation out of some of those strong names into names that are sitting tight and setting up for some breakouts right now. So for now, is it alt season? I think it's too early to call it alt season. Certainly there's been some strong moves, some nice gains to be had, some good trades. But I'm of the opinion this is just another one of those tradable rallies like we saw, in early Feb, like we saw in late December, and like we will continue to see periodically until we really turn the corner from this macro bear market and go back to a long-term bull market. When we're in one of those markets where week after week, month after month, we're making new steady highs, then you will begin to see true alt season, true long-term rallies, and at that point I'll be looking at a little bit more long-term and position trading, and not so much this relatively quick short-term swing trading that has basically been my strategy right now. But we begin to turn the corner and start to signify some longer-term changes in the chart. At that point, it's going to be a little bit more of a long-term view for me. I certainly will continue to do my trading, but at that point I'll want to hold for a little bit bigger and longer gains from there. So thanks for watching as always, guys. I appreciate you being here. Wanted to bring that market update. I will keep you all updated. And until next time, take care, everyone.